Hey guys, welcome back. Today we are going to work on plants, fast and furious. So let's talk about what all plants share in common. First, they are all photosynthetic autotrophs, and that means that they all use the sun's energy to make sugar or glucose. So we've talked about photosynthesis, and autotroph simply means that they can make their own food. Humans are heterotrophs. We cannot make our own food. We saw this when we did our evolution lesson with our little Pac-Man as our heterotroph. They are all multicellular, made up of many eukaryotic cells, and they are all producers, okay, which means that they're at the very base of our food web in ecosystems. And we'll really delve into this more when we get into our ecology unit next. All right, plants. So let's talk about plants categorization. There are two major categories of plants. First, we have non-vasculars. These generally have no tubes or vessels. The image shows a moss, which is a non-vascular, and then we have vasculars, which have tubes or vessels for transport. That would be like your trees and big plants. So non-vascular are traditionally very low liers in our system. Moss is very close to the ground. Where vascular, they have the vessel system, so they can move the food from the base up the plant. Okay, within vascular plants, we have two different types. First, we have seedless. Seedless plants use spores for reproduction, and then we have seeded plants, and these use seeds for reproduction. So if you can think of spore and seeded, those are our two different types. Spores are not seeds. If you go back to our reproduction, remember spores are clones, produce clones. They have the same genetic material. It is not sexual reproduction. It is asexual reproduction. All right. Then if we look even further into this, our seeded plants have two different types. We have gymnosperms, and that's where the seeds are contained within cones. This would be your Christmas trees, your pine trees, all that. Those are gymnosperms. And then we have our angiosperms, and these have seeds and fruits that develop from flowers. So we're very familiar with angiosperms. All right, so let's look at our Stirninger processes that go along with our plants. First, we have synthesis. So there are two major examples of synthesis in plants. First is photosynthesis, which the plants use to make food, and there's a lovely picture of some chloroplasts in cells. And then we have protein synthesis. We've talked all about how protein synthesis occurs, but you have to make proteins to make the structural material that makes life. Transport. All right, so our non-vascular plants move their food and water through the process of osmosis, which we, and actually water through osmosis. Because we learned that osmosis is diffusion of water, and we learned how it moves, high to low, all of those things earlier in the year. Now, vascular plants, they have what's called xylem and phloem. Okay, xylem transports water, and phloem transports food. Okay, and I remember this because phloem sounds like it starts with an F, so phloem and food. All right, and then xylem transports water, and this happens in the vascular bundle or the vein. Now, if you look at this cross section of a leaf, okay. You need to label this on your graphic organizer. At the top, we have the upper epidermis. Then we have the mesophyll. Then we have the bundle sheath and the vein. And then on the other side, we have more mesophyll, the lower epidermis, and we have guard cells. So we'll talk about guard cells here in a second. All right. So in the process, the food must move from the top of the plant down because it's made where light can hit it. And water comes from the base of the plant. It must move up. So the food and the water are flowing in opposite directions. All right, here's some more images of plant cross-section. This might more easily reflect what you have on your page, but excretion. All right, so there are tiny openings on the leaf called stomata, and the stomata allow for gas exchange because we need oxygen and carbon dioxide moving in and out of the leaf. Remember, it takes in CO2 to make the sugars, and it lets off O2 to help us live. All right, this gas exchange, all right, is regulated by those guard cells that I just talked about. All right. Waste can be stored in the leaves that are going to fall off in the autumn. So that is why part of the reason why leaves fall off is that excretion of the waste. So here's another image. It shows the cuticle. The cuticle is a waxy layer on top that protects the leaf. Then we have the upper epidermis, the mesophyll, the lower epidermis. Then we have the palisade layer and the spongy layer. So the palisade layer is a little more aligned, where the spongy layer is a little more spongy, and then you can see the vein there in the middle. All right, respiration. All right, respiration. We plants use oxygen and sugar to produce ATP for energy, okay? But that is also after it's taken in water and carbon dioxide to make those sugars. So respiration, it's the process, okay? So we have photosynthesis, and respiration is the opposite of photosynthesis. It takes what is produced in photosynthesis and uses oxygen to break it down. All right, nutrition. Sugars produced in photosynthesis are used for cellular respiration, or they are stored for later, such as in these apples shown in this image. That is the storage of the sugars, and that is the nutrition process in plants. Growth and development. So we have seeds that germinate to start the process of new development into a new plant, just as we see here. So seeds germinate and they grow. All right, then we have asexual reproduction also occurring. This is called vegetative propagation. Here is an example of a tree whose roots are extending for vegetative propagation. You can also see this in spider plants when they branch off, or the pothos that is in my classroom that I can easily clip and make it propagate new plants. All right, spores are another means of asexual reproduction. These are produced in non-vascular plants such as ferns, and they're used for reproduction, but they are asexual. All right, then seeds are an example of sexual reproduction. You can find it in the cones in gymnosperms, or they can be found in the fruits, all right, and angiosperms. All right, now you're going to need to label the parts of a flower. All right, so our male parts, all right, if we're going to look here, we have the stamen, which is the sum of the anther and the filament. So we have the filament, which is this little stem here, and the anther is the top. The anther has the pollen on it. Then we have the female part, which is the pistil, all right, down through the middle. All right, at the top it has the stigma, all right, the style, the ovary, and the ovule. Okay, the ovary contains the ovule, which is the egg. All right, the stigma is often very sticky, all right, and it's where the pollen lands, and then it moves down the style and fertilizes the ovule within the ovary. All right, so to further go over that, pollination occurs when pollen from the male is transferred to the stigma of the female. And fertilization occurs when the sperm, which is found in the pollen, meets the egg in the ovary. So pollen itself is not the sperm. There are sperm contained within the pollen. So for example, when a male human ejaculates, the semen, okay, has sperm in it, but it also has many other things. So the pollen is the same. It contains sperm in it, but it also contains many other things. And the egg is in the ovary. Generally, the pollen needs to come from another flower, though that is not always true. And it's usually moved by bees, birds, butterflies. All these different things can carry the pollen from the male to the female. All right, regulation. So we have plants regulate their growth and control responses to stimuli using things such as auxin, cytokinin, and ethylene. All right, and they also have what are called tropisms, and these are growth responses to external stimuli. So plants will have a growth stimulus that they will grow towards light, okay? And then also they grow up, so they feel gravity. So if you look at this image, it shows the roots will always grow down towards gravity and the top will always grow up away from gravity. And then they also, certain plants will grow around things, such as this vine in this image. It wraps around. So if you were to stick your finger there for a while, that vine would eventually wrap around your finger, just as it's wrapping around this wood pole. All right, so let's look at some plant adaptations. So we have the cuticle that protects the leaves from getting too wet. Then we have surface area. The leaves can grow very large, so they can make large amounts of sugar, or they can be very small. We have carnivorous that supplement their food by eating bugs, such as this Venus flytrap. And then we have protection. Plants will protect themselves, such as this cactus. We have some stem adaptations. You have tubers, which are like your potatoes. You have succulents. We have tendrils, and we have runners. So if you look at those images, those are all examples. Succulents are very popular these days. And then we have root differences. We have tap roots, like your carrots. You have very fibrous roots, which is probably what you're used to. And then you have root hairs, which can supplement the food of a very small plant.